Disclaimer. This episode is about cancel culture. Keep the comments clean. Have good discussion. And if you cancel me, make sure I am canceled in the good way. I really enjoyed this episode. I plan on having Randy back in the future. Thank you for listening to the BullRun podcast. Go down to the abyss. Like, subscribe, comment. Try to keep the comments clean. Everybody has their own opinion about this monster of cancel culture and mob mentality. But overall, was a good episode. Thank you, and enjoy the episode. This is the BullRun podcast. You are here with Spencer Lowry and Randy.
Gerson.
Gerson.
Yep, like person, but with a G.
Gerson. I know another Gerson.
I think it's actually a fairly common last name. There's another. I think it's Randy Gerson, who is like a PhD who's written some book on something. So every time I look up my name, I'm like, wow, I'm looking up to it. Haven't gotten there yet.
Not there yet. Yeah, I know a Katie Gerson. She's a good person. A little wild, but a good person. So, yeah, so you work with Eli.
Yep. And, so I'm a 3D artist at an architecture place. We do 3D renders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the most exciting thing, but we make buildings.
Make buildings.
Yeah.
Better at it than I am.
Probably. Yeah. So I'm a 3D artist, in general, creator. Went to college with Eli, studied game art and design. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to scoot slightly this way.
Scooch it this way?
Yeah, talk at the mic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which pattern it has.
Yeah, no, I have it set to the room, but it's better to talk kind of just directly at it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you went to school with Eli.
Yep.
And today we're going to talk about a real touchy subject.
Yeah.
Which is cancel culture. But before I get chewed out,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be real nosy.
Yes.
Because I talked to your mom
Mm-hmm.
at the wedding where the first place I met you.
Yeah.
You're Jewish?
By birth. Yes.
By birth. Okay.
By practice, I am atheist. So.
Okay. Is she Jewish?
She converted.
She converted?
So when I
Okay.
was born, I would be a Jew.
Okay.
Because it is carried in the mother's lineage.
Yeah, it's carried, yeah. I have several Jewish. That's the reasons I asked. I was like, Are you a true Jew or are you a...
Yeah. Technically I am, and it makes for very interesting situations than being atheist and by birth a Jew. Like the last name Gerson is a Jewish tribal name. That's why it is common. And it's interesting because people will like sometimes call me out like basically, hey, you're a Jew, and it's like, oh, yeah.
Well, what about it?
Kinda. Like, is it a race? Is it culture? I guess it is. Technically.
Technically.
Yeah, but it's also a religion, and it's like, well, I don't practice.
Don't.
I had ham yesterday.
I don't know necessarily if it's so much a religion, because I have Jewish friends who just like don't believe the religion part, but they're like, it's a guideline.
Yeah.
They're like I don't have to believe in the God necessarily, and there's some interpretations of Judaism where there is no God, and they're just like, it's just all these souls in a collection interacting with each other, and I'm like, They're like, it's a guideline, and I think it's a good one, so
I'm gonna stick with it. Yeah, it's interesting because you don't hear it too often from other religions, something like that. Like, even if someone isn't practicing their religion as, like, fully as maybe, like, the books that they follow. Yeah, you wouldn't hear someone be like, "Oh, I'm Christian by birth, but I don't practice Christianity, but I'm still a Christian." I can't. But Judaism is that way, where it's like, I can't not be a Jew because I was born as a Jew. I have Jewish lineage. I did ancestry, and like, it can trace your Jewish.
Well, it's a little bit of a protocol for breeding, which is strange.
It is.
The Mormons do the same thing. I grew up with Mormons, and they for a long time did that. They frankly just stole it straightly from the Judaism religion, from Judaism. But they're like, breeding protocol, these people with these people, and like I'm like, oh, that's a little strange to do that to humans. We're not cattle.
And then it gets kind of weird because then if you look at like the family tree, it's like, oh, why are these two cousins?
Oh, everywhere.
Are we inbred? A
little bit, but they knew better than to have multi-lineage inbreeding. So it's very strange that they knew better than that, but they're like a little bit to carry on like this particular trait. It's very strange. I have friends who the hardcore mystic Judaism that they grew up in, and actually my step grandmother is a mystic Jew.
Oh, okay.
And so like they have like lineage lines of like all the way back, just like 100 generations. Jeez. And they're like, this person had this trait and we wanted all the children to have this, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like that's like you're breeding dogs but with yourselves. What is going on here?
Yep. It's interesting because we think that we're so above like what we see like people doing with dogs. There's a Pomeranian.
We're just genetics.
Yeah. We're just selectively breeding ourselves.
But it's interesting because that's what the big part of the culture thing that I've always been exposed to, and the Mormons do the same thing, as I said, and I'm like, that is odd.
Yep, and it's interesting because even though as humans, with our mentality and stuff, we don't think, oh yeah, I'm selectively breeding, but we'll see someone who's tall and be like, ooh, I like tall. I want my kids to be tall, or oh, I like this kind of hair, and it's just genetic advancement. And I guess that we're not forcing it the same way we would on dogs, like only you and only you. But
our meat bodies are like, you might be a little bit too tall. If your offspring are a little bit taller, they might have problems. So let's make you attracted to short people.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting though, but I like it. I mean, I like it. It's just I like talking about it. I don't like the fact that we do it, because then you look at what happens with animals, and you got the bulldog, the poor bulldog.
Oh man, my some people I stay with for New Orleans, down there they have a bulldog, and I look at it and I'm like, Sir Arthur, you have a lot wrong with you. Yeah. And I have a pug, and I'm like, she's fucked up, but like that bulldog, I'm like, oh man, there's so much wrong with it.
Between pugs and bulldogs, it's just like, you guys, I'm glad you exist because I like looking at you, but I'm sorry you exist.
I'm sorry you exist.
It was an accident. It was
No, it wasn't. It was intentional. It wasn't an accident. We literally we want this ugly. Look, this one out of the litter came out so messed up. We thought it was going to die. Oh, it didn't die. Let's breed it with all of its siblings so that it gets more like it. Like, Jesus Christ.
And then we put it into dog shows, and they were like, can you make it uglier? If its face was just a little bit more squashed, it can't breathe. Can you just squash it anyway?
So ugly, it's cute. Because that's what that is. When I look at my pug, I'm like, you are so ugly. You are cute.
Yep.
Why are we like this? Why are us humans like this? Why do we do that?
Yeah. But that is the human condition, I guess. That
we fuck with shit that we shouldn't.
Yep. And then we get mad at each other for doing it, because as we're talking about, we're shitting on pugs, there's someone out there that loves pugs, and they're like, hey, don't shit on pugs, I love them, And for every one thing that one person goes, we probably shouldn't do that, there's someone else going, we have to do that right now, more of it.
More of it. It's just play dynamics, pull and take, you know.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I think that leads into kind of what we were going to talk about, the hot button issue that maybe we should have a disclaimer before. Like, I am not... That the opinions I may express are not necessarily even my own.
We're just playing with ideas.
Yeah.
Do not pin us with anything. We're talking about cancel culture. Don't cancel me. But if you do, make sure that it makes me popular.
Yeah. Cancel me in the big way.
Cancel me in the big way.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, earlier talking about what I study, what, you know, being an artist, I think that it's something that does need to be discussed in a creative field, or like even podcasting, where you are just normally expressing opinions. You're just talking. You know, you look at Joe Rogan, how many times he's gone into some dangerous waters for simply saying, I think this.
Yeah.
And that's all he's saying. And then, dun dun dun, cancel. You know, or attempted cancel. And then it's
I don't think you can cancel that machine. What
even is canceling? You know, right now, J.K. Rowling is again being canceled. Well, if you were already canceled, how are you again canceled? You know? So I think, though, as any kind of creative, it's something that does need to be talked about, because if everything becomes dangerous to do, is anyone going to do anything? At least if it's worth doing.
But the people like Joe, or the people that outspeak, they realize that even if you get quote unquote canceled, it's gonna end up okay.
But does it if you're a smaller creator? Because if you're huge, that's one thing, you know.
But you can learn to use that momentum.
Okay, but how?
You get the team, even if it's the team you hate. Like, disclaimer: don't dislike trans people. Dated a few. If you have the team, like, you say something that's, you know, in the terms of biology, like, well, yeah, clearly biological level, you know, there's this advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah.
You know. And then the people who you're like, but I don't hate trans people, you know, and then you say, all right, you say that the PC culture side just tries to tackle you. Well, then you be a little bit of an asshole, and you call to the side that you really don't like and agree with, and you go, back me up. And then that gives you more attention. And then people that are centralist, that are actually not on the left or the right, can go, I see you're tiptoeing that fine line, but you understand it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think that's a difficult area,
so
because at some point, you know, like you see someone like Taylor Swift was for a very long time not saying anything politically to build as much of a following as possible. And then the moment that she could no longer stand it and said, this is basically where I stand politically. I don't like this side, I do like this side, or I don't like something that someone on this side did, and it came out that Taylor Swift leans more towards the left. A lot of people who thought that she was more their country pop icon and was more right-leaning started saying, I will never listen to Taylor Swift again. You know, and I guess, you know, well,
she got a whole new market from that.
Yeah. It's interesting, because then you also have, like, the whole Miley Cyrus, where she was, you know, the little pop girl who you know, all the kids loved, had a whole child demographic, and then she went out and broke the Disney mold and went and did her crazy, and had pretty large success. And I actually appreciated how weird and wacky she was being.
Oh, it was so good.
It was so fun. And now I actually don't want to follow anything that she does anymore, that she's gone back to being vanilla, basic, you know, I'm just a country girl. For me, it's like, not fun. I know.
Not fun. I play a lot of instruments. I play the banjo, and back before, right when she was going crazy, she would still go to, like, country music festivals that were like bluegrass festivals. And
before she went crazy.
No, during like short hair Miley Cyrus, like
one piece bathing
suit. Yes, still going to these
God.
And there's videos of her singing in these bluegrass bands. They're just jam sessions that are just phenomenal. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and she's openly talked about, she's like, this is a piece of music that I grew up with and I loved, and I would love to make a career out of this, but I can't, because this kind of media is dead. You know, there's a select few that listen to bluegrass, and you might have some hipster Mumford & Sons, which really isn't bluegrass, but I won't even argue with that. Have some of that, but she's like, I cannot make the amount of money that I am doing that.
Yeah.
And so I will enjoy that on the side, and I'll be crazy. And she pretty much said in these interviews, like, the craziness is just a front.
And it worked.
It worked.
She now she's not as much in the spotlight. So if she technically, retired from the pop business, she's going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she can do the bluegrass that she actually loves, or, the whole countryside more so, and she'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of the thing that, because if we look at the crazy Miley Cyrus, then I don't know that in the course of the recent, 5-10 years since then, it's only been about 5.
Yeah, it's not been long.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I think that if she started doing that right now in the world that we're in, she might be canceled in a way, because it does look, at least from where I sit, like a level of appropriation. And is she satirizing the black experience through her music? And there were discussions about that, but I don't think they were as loud as they are now. And should she have been stopped from doing it, I think is a question. Like, with cancel culture, I think it comes from a good place.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's trying to stop people from hurting others, from taking cultures and bastardizing them, taking ideas, destroying them, and hurting and harming other people. Yeah.
But I think it's tackling the wrong things. So
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I look at now, I guess let's start getting to some of the bigger cases or something. You have like the Louis C.K. situation. And do I think in a way he should be, or should have been, because that was now a while ago, like punished for his action? And, if anyone doesn't know, it was, I believe, masturbating in front of his, intern kind of person, I think?
He's
something
a strange
like that.
dude.
Yeah.
But religious, don't you forget that.
Yeah. But from what I understand, he would ask the people, like, can I masturbate in front of you?
It's get permission first.
And I get that he does have a certain level of power, when he's entering into that situation. And I understand that could, or is, not even could be, it's an uncomfortable situation if your boss is coming in and being like, hey, I pay your paycheck. You mind if I masturbate in front of you? I just want you to look. I'm not going to touch you. Just watch me do this. I mean, it's hard. It's going to be hard to say no, especially if he's a powerful, successful person. But I then think of potentially who he is, because he is a comedian. And I think of what kind of person tends to be a comedian, and just looking at who he is, he probably wasn't, the sexiest, most powerful man when he was younger. And I'm not trying to give him an excuse for what he did.
Oh, that's fucking weird.
Exactly. And it does hurt and harm people in a way. So, but should he have his career ruined? And it wasn't ruined. And I think that's one of the things, is like, cancel culture sounds real big and bad for these people.
I think it's bad at its job.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually cancel. It's a call to action to boycott is what I guess it really, if we were to define it, comes down to. And for a bigger artist, it just changes their demographic, it seems. Because what happened with Louis C.K.? He was very liberal-leaning, and then once everything, hit the fan, he came out with his stand-up act, that was more conservative based, and he's still making millions of dollars. He's still a touring comedian making a decent living. He may have lost his TV show, he may have lost some opportunities that he had, in the running at that time, but he's still fairly successful. Maybe not as successful. And is that enough? I mean, I kind of think so.
See, my problem with cancel culture is, so for me, there's a fine line in between mob mentality, anarchy, and it being a government. Okay. Like mob mentality, that's literally all government is. It's everybody agrees that we all do taxes and we all have a civilization. That's just the mob agreeing, and when there's chaos in it, that's anarchy. So, but when everyone agrees to cancel something, that's like a little government saying like, no, bad, not good. So there's a fine line in between those three. And the cancel culture, to me, when we give attention to individuals and we say cancel them, that's doing nothing but giving more attention to them. And as far as I know, in reality, the more attention you give something, the bigger it gets. And the more power it gets or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. A dog will take bad attention over no attention. And so I think, I wish this mob of people that are really trying to come from a good place would go after, like, systemic things. Like go to your governor's house who passed the law that, incarcerates stupid high number of African Americans and sit in front of their house and stare them down like a dog and say, you change this. And even if they don't have the power to change it, they do. So I'm like, it's directed in the wrong way for me.
Well, I think that's interesting to say that it is like a small government.
It is. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's people getting together and organizing.
But then that's kind of the question, and I guess it's even a question within our government, the overarching U.S. government itself, is who dictates then? Who's mandating the rules? Who is saying this is a cancelable offense? And who is saying this is okay? Yeah. Because
1%.
Yeah. Because again, as someone who would want to create something, be it art, be it writing, be it, podcasting, be it video content, whatever you create and you put out to a mass market, should you bite your tongue on certain things, or should you speak about it? And how do you know? Where is the rule book of what you can and can't say? Because let's say right now this conversation we're having is cancelable, and no one hears about this conversation for 5-10 years. But then now you have some level of success, and this conversation comes back to haunt you. Is that fair?
Not necessarily, because times and stigmas change. So I don't think it's fair that... Alright, my grandparents, the lingo they use to describe people of other ethnicities is just blatantly wrong today. But that was the lingo they grew up with and was the proper language to use to describe, know? And you wouldn't dare say that today.
Yeah.
And so it's all time period. So I think if, you say something and we can all acknowledge that back then it was fucked up.
Yeah.
Like even back then it was fucked up. And then it might be okay to cancel. But if you're saying it like I use some words that are considered offensive, 15 years from now, that weren't offensive now, there's no reason I should get canceled for that. If it's time appropriate, and I want the mob to learn, here's the time appropriate thing. But there are some things where people are just blatantly, you're like, oh yeah, even back then that was an asshole, weird thing.
I think that with that, the difficulty is in, I guess, quantifying the cancelable offense.
Yes.
Because like, it's easy to say. If I lean across the table and punch you in the face,
Yeah.
you're bruised. You know, you can see the action. You know, it's all this that you can see, feel, show the mark, and we can quantify it basically with numbers. Like, you are this amount of bruised. You know, if I break your facial bone, it's like, oh, this, we can put this in a doctor record. We know this.
Emotional trauma is hard to
Yeah.
quantify.
So if I make fun of you, how much of that is, how do we know how much that affected you?
But it fluctuates too. In
Yeah.
certain parts of your life that making fun of, you'll be like, pfft. And then other times it would have been the worst thing ever.
Yeah, you're right now emotionally vulnerable. So if I say, you could lose some weight, it's like, oh man, now I'm
thanks.
terrible. Yeah, now I hate it. Yeah, but then if you know that you just ate a whole pizza, you know, today, and you're in one of the best moods that you're in, and then you're like, oh, you could lose some weight. Yeah, I know. I just ate a whole pizza.
I know I was a fat ass. Like, let me enjoy it.
So it fluctuates, and because it's like, let's look at the situations of like the blackface. You know, people are getting canceled for something they did 20, 30 years ago, and I'm not saying that it was a right thing to do 20, 30 years ago.
I don't think it was, but there's less stigma back then, so the punishment should be equivalent of that time.
Yeah, like, what was the movie with Johnny Five? Short Circuit, is that it?
I'm horrible at names of stuff.
Well, if you remember the movie from the 80s with the movie in the 80s with the robot that gets sentience, there's a white actor who does brownface. He paints himself as like an Indian in movies that were out at that time, and it was like the later 80s. So it's like, if you're allowed to do that in cinema, how can you then hold someone accountable for doing it in...
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it was done, that it's a smart thing to do, but people didn't know as much as they do now. Like, consent, the conversation of consent has gone a large way. And speaking to, you know, people just in my parents' generation, just, you know, 50, 60 years old, it's like, oh, if that's consent today, I may have I may have basically been taken advantage of a couple of times. A lot of times, almost every time, you know. It's like, oh, that's upsetting.
It's upsetting. Yeah.
But, like, the act of being able to say no during the action in the 70s, 80s wasn't really a conversation. You started it.
You finished the dance.
Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays, we know that's not the case. It's not. So now do we go back and press charges against everyone who in the 70s, 80s, hey, you harassed someone, you assaulted someone, you know, to someone. Do we now go and press charges against every one of those people, try them as a rapist for...
When at the time it wasn't.
Yeah. And I don't know, because it's scary when you go to create something. When you want to make something.
Because then your name's on that forever.
Yeah. So, you know, if you have a selection of books here, if you write a book and you put, you know, in one chapter some opinion-ish kind of thing, or you have a character do something, and you don't think anything of it.
I like the things that dance the line, though.
But you know, you don't think anything of it at the time, and then 10 years later, someone's reading your book, and they say, this is bad. Should no one ever buy your books again?
No, because I still read Shakespeare.
I do too, yeah.
You know, so, I mean, and there's a lot of fucked up shit in that.
Yeah. And then do we also separate the artist from
The artwork?
The artwork.
I think there is amount of that needs to happen. So, like, let's say I paint a building. It's a beautiful building. I paint it, you know, copy and paint it. And 20 years down the road, we have a civil war, and it's like used as the central of whatever the opposing side. No one can hold me accountable because I painted a building before it was bad.
Yeah.
You know, some people might be like, you painted this. I'm like, well, I painted it before it was used for that. So it's
Yep.
not I'm not in the wrong in that sense. So I think there has to be some separation in between the item and the artist. I mean, I'm not going to defend Trump ever, but like the lady who like did his head on the platter and stuff,
Yeah.
I'm like, separation right there. I know she was making a very clear, not so great statement, but there needs to be separation because she's doing a form of art. Because when you start to censor that, it's I think that's dangerous. Because if you put the laws there or the mentality to censor, whenever the coin flips, so like whenever you go from left to right, the other side has the capability to go, now we're gonna censor your side.
Yeah.
And we're gonna burn all your books, and we're gonna really change the history
To match our view.
So leave the art and that stuff alone, and go after the systemic stuff. That's what I say. That's like so I do agree with going after several of the Civil War statues, just because they were put up out of spite.
Yeah.
And I'm like, take those motherfuckers down. I live in Alabama. Like, take them down. They're horrible. But some of the statues that people are going after that have nothing to do with it, I'm like, why are you destroying this? You should, again, be outside the governor's house going, tick, tick, tick. You have some time. Do the things. Because that's the whole point of government.
Yeah.
Like, we are the mob. The higher ups need to be deathly afraid of us. They need to be afraid of the guillotine coming out at any moment. So I'm like, it's directed in the wrong way.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm fairly progressive in my political
I know you
leaning and my even belief systems and all that. And I have to admit, I get very annoyed at how inactive a lot of progressive leaning people are.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I have a lot of friends who now want to go third-party voting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have anything against that idea. But what my problem is that, okay, you want to have a new party that means something for you, that will represent what you stand for. You should. It's a democracy. You should want that. That should be what you go for. If the party stops representing you, you should develop a new party. But why are you only looking at it at the top level? The president is not the end-all be-all.
No. So, vote local.
Yeah, you want a Green Party to be an actual party, because that's where a lot are leaning. It's like, don't just look at it during presidential elections. It won't gain any traction until you start having green mayors. You start having, even
base.
Yeah, even green-leaning sheriffs. You need to vote all the way. You need to start going to your town hall meetings. Are you paying taxes? You're paying taxes. Go to town hall. Okay, you might not own property, but hey, if you can still get in there, just sit there and learn what's happening.
I'm not gonna call names, but there is this individual on my Facebook who had a mental breakdown when Bernie didn't win, and then when Hillary didn't win. But I know this individual personally, and they did not vote. And I'm like, you have no right to say any shit whatsoever. If you do not vote, you have no right. And I got in an argument with them like this, and they're like, well, some people aren't as embodied. They went full PC. They're like, some people aren't as embodied and can't go to the voting stand and stuff like that. I'm like, I will come to your house and help you sign up for mail voting.
Yep.
Like, if you cannot do it, I will help you do it. Like, there's no reason not to vote. If you do not vote, you do not have a right to say shit, in my opinion. So,
and people died for that right,
Yeah.
Like, there were massive fights over voting, and I get it. It does feel helpless at times. Like, it does feel like my vote doesn't matter. It does feel oftentimes like that. But if you look at the history, it's worth the fight.
Yeah.
How much of your time does it really take to vote? I mean, I know that in some sections there is gerrymandering, and it does force like the 5-hour lines. Yeah, it's real bad in some areas. But for most
vote
people,
to fix that.
Yeah, and most people, it's only going to be like 5 minutes, maybe 20. Maybe, if you got
It's
to...
5 for me.
Yep. And like I said, I do know that there are some people that there are more legitimate kind of issues, and we vote to change it. You got to try. Nothing happens super easy.
What I don't remember what the percentages is. I think it's like only 40% of Americans vote?
Something like that, yeah.
So I don't remember the stat. But I'm like, and then people say voting doesn't work, and I'm like, well, if you look at the stats of the 1% voting, it's close to 100% of them vote.
Yep.
So, all the universe requires you to do is to say your opinion and do the call to action for your opinion. That's all it requires.
Yep. And, and it's funny because it's like, speaking of the universe, speaking of the call to action, it's like, I'm sure that you've read The Secret, or
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because me, as a more logical person, I don't believe that much in the magic side of it. Like, oh, I think it, therefore it will be.
I mean, Eli argue over this.
But for me, it also fully makes sense because it's like, well, if I'm thinking about something every day, if I just put that out there in my mind's eye or whatever, I'm going to just be more conscious of
about
its
that
appearance.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But then people who think about, who use The Secret or try to, and they want to base their entire lives on it, then at the same time go, oh, I think it, therefore it will be, and I don't have to do anything. I have to throw my hands up and do nothing.
Call to action.
Yep. Because it's just the law of attraction, which people have written bigger books on, that actually say you have to act, you have to bring it into the universe. It will happen, and
It's just manifestation.
Yeah. And if it takes 10 years, trust me, at the end of that 10 years, you're going to look back and go, wow, this was nothing because I now have everything.
Yeah. I mean, that you think about it, that 10 years, like, is no time whatsoever. I can think back of being 13 years old, like, and I'm like, Jesus, that went by so fast. So it's a little mundane in the moment.
30, so.
Yeah, it's a little mundane in the moment, but it's really not that hard. And it's, as you said, just the focus and attention and call to action. And people I'll get shit for saying manifestation, but I don't mean like magically manifesting. Yeah, I mean like this piece of pottery, someone put a chunk of clay that they had silted through and all that, as a block, and then they rounded it out, and they did everything with their hands and worked it out and got all the pieces and then glazed it and kilned it, and all that.
Yeah.
That's the manifestation part. That's the call to action part. They put in the effort to make the thing. They had the idea in their head, or at least a vague idea, and it might have changed as they were going, because that happens.
Yeah.
But that's the call to action part. You have to do that part. Just saying, oh, I want this, that doesn't work.
Yeah. It's like, if you want, I try and eat right and exercise and be healthy. And it's like, if you want to lose weight, it's first you have to say, okay, you know what? Today I want to lose weight. I'm on my own weight loss journey. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. I'm trying. But you have to first say, okay, you know what? I want to start losing weight. You say it. And there's actually statistics and stuff that show that even just saying something and truly thinking about it, like if you were to just write your weight down day by day by day, what they found is that people actually still maintaining pretty much the same diet, or trying to, over a course of time, if they do say, I'm trying to lose weight, they actually will start to lose weight. But it's a very minuscule amount.
Minuscule.
So you have to actually, when you say that, say, I'm going to start losing weight, then you have to start changing your diet. Then you have to start exercising. And once you start doing these things, you can actually quantify where you want your goals to be, and you can hit it. And then the thing is, though, is that normally once you hit it, you then want more.
Yeah.
So
it's the constant
cycle.
It's constant chase.
But so I think that going back to canceling and all that, it's an attempt to start manifesting the positive changes, but it's, as we say, it's misdirected, and for me, its misdirection though makes it frightening.
Yeah, it makes it very frightening to me.
Because I think that the biggest. I'm a progressive and I'm a strong ally if I can be. Yes, I am a cishet man, but I am, as much of an ally as I personally can be. I share on Facebook any information I can find and so on and so on. And then I get in discussions or arguments, rather, because I said something wrong. And I remember once I had used, due to ignorance, the term transsexual and transgender interchangeably. I did not know that they were different. I did not know that one has a negative connotation and one doesn't.
Well, that changed over time.
Yeah.
So.
But I was using it interchangeably in a post that I had shared about something, and yes, it's the internet, and I have like 1,000 followers on Facebook. Not a massive amount, but not a small amount. And it became like a common thread of like 300 people basically telling me that I'm kind of an asshole. And it's like, I don't even know what I did. And I think that that's where it's frightening, because there's a local artist to this area who had done kind of a tasteless painting attempting to make a point, and I don't remember which way it was exactly, but it was like the Statue of Liberty either having a knee placed on the back of their neck, or it was the Statue of Liberty placing their knee on the back of someone's neck, and they're basically being canceled or were canceled or however because of that. But they're an older artist. They're like 60 years old. And I just don't think that they understand how tone deaf it is.
That thing was.
Like, I know that back when Trump was first elected, I had to explain to my mom the difference between All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. Because she was saying simply, all lives do matter.
Because
like,
it's a true statement.
No one matters less than anyone
No one
else.
matters any less.
So it was like explaining that, like, but right now it's...
The Black Lives right now are going through a much harder time, so we're going to focus on that.
Yeah. People are treating them like they don't matter.
Yeah.
So, what I keep telling people is just like, Black Lives Matter has a hidden 2 at the end. Black Lives Matter as well. It's just a silent as well at the end. But, just saying, but if my mom were to run around saying in the wrong space, meaning the best
possible intentions,
but saying all lives matter, she just has the wording confused because she's saying everyone should matter, and you're not making it like everyone matters, so all lives matter. If she were to confuse it, could my 6-year-old mother be canceled? This artist who was trying to make a point may be being canceled with potentially the right message, but the wrong delivery. And that's where it goes back to who dictates, who's writing the manual, who dictates what is a cancelable offense.
Well, it fluctuates, as we were saying, it changes over time.
So how do you hold me accountable
Yeah.
to that which I don't even know what I'm doing? Yeah.
I had something very similar. I was on it was like the early days of like Facebook chat kind of thing, live video, and there was this artist, and their whole thing is gender bending, and at the time I was dating this trans guy, and we were sitting there and we were watching this because we both love this artist, and this other person in the comments was like, please don't use the term gender bending, it's offensive. And then my boyfriend at the time took my phone and was like, no, it's not offensive, and they were duking it out in the comments, and I was like, you're doing this on my account, this isn't you.
Oh no.
I'm a cis man.
I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble.
I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. But that person was trying to cancel them for something that really the majority of the community didn't disagree with. They're like, no, this isn't offensive. There are people that fit in the category of gender bent.
Yeah.
They're that or queer gender or whatever. It's there are those people, so using that terminology is not wrong. That this person took it as offense because they're like, well, this is clearly trans because they've transitioned in the thing in the painting, and it's like no, they're just playing with the gender ideals in the painting, in the art form.
And
so
I think that's actually that touches on one of the big issues that we can often see in like the cancel culture area, where oftentimes you see, like, I don't know if they'd be called white apologists or something, but you see the person who isn't who's an ally, getting more upset and more defensive over the issue than the person who it's offending, the person who's being hurt by it. Yeah. It's like, actually, I'm not hurt at all. This is fine. I'm good.
Happens so much.
Everyone else is, oh no, I'm coming to your defense. and like I remember before it was called cancel culture, back in like 2009, 2008, somewhere in there. I was still in high school. I know that. The whole Chris Brown and Rihanna situation, if you followed that.
It's at the very end of my memory.
Basically, Chris Brown beat the shit out of Rihanna. Yeah. And they were dating. And it was, I remember, I'd be going to school on the school bus. I lived in a primarily urban area. And, like, his songs would come on the radio, and it would become like a discussion of like, no, we can't listen to this, or I'm still listening to this anyway. And it was like, you didn't know which way to go, because is the artist equal to their art form, does what the artists do, as we discussed before. But then, where it's interesting is then Rihanna took Chris Brown back. They started dating again after he had beaten the shit out of her. So, are we as a consumer still supposed to be upset at the person who has now been forgiven by the person who they hurt? And I don't, it's like...
Oh, that's a personal opinion then at that point. It's kind of like, ooh, I'm getting in trouble for this one. H.P. Lovecraft, horrible person. I'm still going to read H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
It's... I don't care what his cat was named. I know it's awful. He was a shitty-ass person. But he's the only one I can get real Cthulhu shit from.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's dead, so I don't fucking care.
And he made Lovecrafty... He made a whole genre of horror. Lovecraftian, horrors. It's like, I can't... Do I just call it, alternate universe horror instead, other than Lovecraftian? But...
I mean, I'm going to acknowledge it. He's a dead person, and back then it was probably an okay thing.
Yeah. Sorta.
Sorta. It's still bad, but, it was, in the times, less bad. And yes, he was a shitty person, but he also suffered from migraines and was delusional and fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So, like Picasso cut off his ear. If I have no ear, I'm not going to be mad.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, sorry.
Picasso.
Not Picasso. Van Gogh cut off his own ear because he went nuts. He went manic. Yeah. And, if I struggle with that, like the temptation to cut off my own ear from manicness, I'm not going to say burn all the Picasso paintings.
Yeah. Van
Gogh. Jesus, why I keep doing that.
Yeah. It's just a mess, because it's
such
like
a mess.
I think personally, what I think is that it should change the way that you view the art. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it should make it more complex and engaging because of it. That, like, the hot button one right now is probably J.K. Rowling and, like, her open announcement of being, basically like, look, I am a definitive TERF, and it's like, oh, really? Now, we can argue whether she is, whether she isn't, we can, all that. But let's, for the sake of argument, say she is 100% TERF all the way. I don't think that the book should be burned.
No.
But do I think that it would be interesting then to read the Harry Potter books in the lens that this was written by someone who is...
A TERF?
A TERF.
Yeah.
I think that actually makes it more kind of compelling. Same as like talking about Shakespeare. It's the stories still stand the test of time today. So it's interesting when you look at it through the lens of this was created, whether it was created by Shakespeare or a group of different people who aren't one person, because there's that whole literary debate.
Yeah.
But whoever created it, it was created a few hundred years ago. No question about it. So it's interesting to look at how people haven't changed that much since a time when we wore frilly things around our necks and had puff sleeves. And so you can look at it with those lenses and go, this is interesting in that way. How is a Harry Potter book truly different if the creator is that way?
Maybe it should be a balancing act. So like yeah, she says those pretty not good things on her Twitter, but she's one of the few billionaires who's lost their billionaire status solely through donating to charity.
Yeah.
Like a couple of times. I mean, just giving away so much to charity.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, you did this one thing and it really fucking sucks. We all agree that it sucks. Please don't anymore. Stop arguing. But we're not going to cancel you because you've done all this other stuff that's good. So maybe we need to look for, like uphill the good and say, we tell them, that's not great, but because of the good things you're doing, we're going to keep you around. Please stop doing that. We're going to stop giving that attention. I think it's just attention. Focus the attention. Be like, we're not going to focus on that, because then you don't get Pablo's dog where they're getting the treat for doing the bad thing. It's like we'll give you attention for donating all your money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I know that you listened to Jordan Peterson, right?
That's
and you might be canceled for that. Speaking of canceling,
I
but
know.
his whole career would have not been, his whole current career would not have existed
without cancel culture.
If people just said, "Well, that was stupid," I'm not listening to him. He wouldn't have anything. He wrote like an essay, and people were like, "How dare you?" and made him real popular for a moment. He had 15 minutes of fame. If not, it's still continuing, but it's not as loud. But if it wasn't for people attempting to cancel him, he would have been no one. And then at the same time, he became more and more the image of what people wanted him to be because of the Pavlov's dog situation. Yeah, because they're only going to interview him if he talks about this.
Yeah. And that was one that I was like clips, or like it was a skewed view, because his whole thing wasn't necessarily that he was against trans individuals. It was, no, I don't think the government has the right to tell people
what to say.
And that was his whole thing. And they go after him for that. And that's the danger, in my opinion, is authoritarianism. I don't care if it comes from the left or the right.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, since the Cold War, the executive branch has gotten more and more power, and we're tiptoeing a very dangerous line right now. And I'm like, oh, that's dangerous. And that's because we've given that power. Yeah. That's real. Oh,
I don't want to make my own decisions. I want my leader to be my daddy.
Yeah. No, the person who has the most power over my daily living shouldn't live outside my state, because then I can march to their house and be like, again, like, they shouldn't live outside of my state, and that's dangerous. And people are like, yeah, it's because it's fascism. I'm like, well, here's the thing. We could have gotten a Stalin, too.
Yeah.
We could have gotten communist.
It can go either way.
It can go either way.
And
the danger, it's just as bad. The danger is giving that power to very few people. It's when just a few have control everything, it's dangerous.
And also speaking as a progressive with a lot, basically skating in that independent lane, as well as I know a lot of people who are saying I'm green. I know a lot of people who are then I'm libertarian. And for me personally, speaking with libertarians, I'm like, I don't believe people are good enough to not have a government.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that's anarchist. That is no
Yeah.
government. Libertarians understand. A true libertarian understands that there has to be some form of government. I've met a lot of libertarians. I'm like, no, you just want anarchy.
Yeah.
You don't. You just want to be left alone. I understand that.
Yep.
But you really want anarchy.
Yeah.
You're no different than abolish the police. No, defund the police, demilitarize them, and reform them. Change the way that they function in our society.
Yep.
When you completely take it away, it's a danger. Police right now, I don't like police.
Yeah.
I will flat. And I come from a family of police officers. Yeah. My mother is a police officer.
Oh, okay, that's real close.
Yes, and I'm like, I don't agree with the power play that this is in our society because it's dangerous.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's like Camden though did actually already do a defunding the police, and they went from one of the most dangerous cities in the U.S. to still being a pretty dangerous city, but it's getting better.
Which city?
Camden, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was one of the top 10, if not, it was in the top 5, I think, for a while. And being someone who went to high school in southern New Jersey, I was familiar with Camden. We drove through it, and it was like, oh no, I'm not getting out of this car.
Well, when you have an abusive dad in the house, you're going to have a few children that fight and punch back. Yeah. That's literally all the crime is.
And then I forget exactly how it all went down. But it was basically the governor at the time, I can't think of his name, Chris Christie. I had a brain fart for a moment. But
that dude.
He was not giving, he was basically defunding the police, but not really. He was just not giving money because he was a more conservative governor. And they were basically going broke. So the police force was being defunded.
So what do? They steal money. They steal. When they get their money either way, whether or not it's from the government or the population.
Yep. And then what wound up happening was Camden needed more police force to police the area, but the police weren't getting paid, so they weren't paying more officers. So people from the community started becoming the police, and now what wound up happening was that I believe that they were eventually able to start funding the police, efficiently, and now a lot of people from the community were brought into their force. But in long story short is that it works. Yeah. Defunding actually does have a positive effect. But again, all these things go to who watches the Watchmen,
Yeah. I think again it's the power should be more local. Like I said, so and it should. An example is right. Grew up in family of police officers. They should be paid more as individuals, but they should be required more schooling and more counseling, more training, all that. Right? You don't even have to know self-defense. So I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's quite a few police officers in there, and they are just talk about all the time like these other police officers are dangers to everyone else because the only form of defense they have is the gun on their side. They have no other tools in their toolbox to de-arm anyone else other than pointing a gun at someone. And that's fucking dangerous.
Oh yeah.
And so I grew up in a family of police officers. They do not spend their money on paying their police officers. What they do is they buy military grade stuff. You do not. I come from a small town of 3,000 people, right? My police officers don't need 3 military grade Hummers.
No, they don't.
They don't. You know what happens when you have a Waco? Your local police don't do shit. SWAT team, CIA, FBI's dudes come in and take care of it because it's such a rare occurrence that they don't even need that. We need to go back to your police officer as your neighbor that you know, and not some dude in military grade. I'm gonna take you down. I'm trying to be your daddy, kind of person. Like, Jesus Christ, that's dangerous.
And I mean, I don't think, at least a majority of people, truly don't understand how dangerous it is to be a police officer. But the issue is that if a police officer makes it dangerous to be a civilian when you see a police officer coming...
I shouldn't be afraid.
Yeah, it makes you more likely to make it dangerous for the police officer. It's like a never-ending cycle. If I think this person's going to shoot me or harm me in some way, I want to shoot and or harm them first. It's self-defense. Well, now, if everyone's thinking that the police are going to shoot and harm them, if I'm a police officer, I'm thinking everyone wants to shoot and harm me.
It's just the arms race. It's like, you know, how we had an arms race with Russia. It's just an arms race within the country. When I saw a photo of the Black Panthers in Atlanta, and they were decked out in military gear, and they were sitting there and they were protecting. I was like, that's okay. I'm less worried about them shooting. I'm really worried about the other side taking the first shot.
Yeah.
And then it full-blown war. And that happens. So, like, my sister lives in Huntsville, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And they went to a protest. And they were sitting up there. And she, like, Facebook Lived it all. And it was peaceful protest.
Yeah.
And they had... This was shitty of the city, by the way. So, the original documentation said that they were good till 8 p.m. to protest. In the middle of the protest, the city changed it to 6 p.m. So cut 2 hours off the time. Yeah. And everyone was like, no, we applied till 8 p.m. Fuck you. Approval. We had approval. We're going to continue our protest. And it was peaceful. And they were sitting there and they were protesting and just walking. And the police officers just unloaded with tear gas and rubber bullets. Like, and I was like, they didn't know one was being violent. I watched it. I watched it where she was live. And I was like, no one is being violent. The police officers took the first shot because they have fucking I wanna be daddy issues.
Yeah.
This is dangerous.
Yeah. Because now if I was tear gassed, what would I want to do next time I see the police?
I'll blow their fucking brains out.
I'm just gonna go give them a hug, you know? No.
No.
I'm mad now. And, you know, that's what leads to people who now are angry going up to a police car that's parked, seeing an officer in there,
and beating them to death.
Yeah. You know, just emptying a clip into the police car. And we hear stories about that. You know, if you come from a police family, I'm sure you've heard your family go, I'm scared today because this happened over here. This is a scary day. You know, I don't know if I'll come home this week, you know, and it's dangerous. But the daddy issue cops are the ones, they make it worse for the good cops. You know, and there's a whole all cops are bad and that whole thing. But I think that, you know, people also have to consider the fact that there truly isn't all that much incentive to be a police officer.
Oh no, you barely make any money.
Yeah. Especially not for the risk you're putting your life under.
Or the middle of nowhere areas, you barely make any. So like, I don't know many city cops, but the ones I have known were chill. But the middle of nowhere cops are, my mom's a weird exception because she's highly educated. But all the others were dropout from high school, never grew out of that, were the kind of person that was always wanting to have dominance over. Every police officer I know that is in a rural area, that's exactly who they are. And so I don't want to say all cops are bad because my mom's not. She's one of the more educated ones. She says some shit because of the environment she's in that I'm like, Jesus Christ, you know. But the other ones, all the others I know that are in the police in these smaller towns, they are dangerous. They are looking for a fight. I mean, one of them is named Pistol because he pistol whips people.
Good guy, yeah. And but like, I think that yes, they may exist, and they may not even be the exception to the rule. But it's kind of, for me, a question of like, I know people who want to become doctors just for the paycheck.
Yeah.
I know people who want to be lawyers just for the paycheck. They may not be, you know, the right mentality for the field that they're going into, and they might do it anyway. But I think that at least a lot of police believe that they're going to do good. You know, maybe not in certain areas, you know. But I think that in areas where there are more options, I think that people who are then choosing to, you know what, I'm going to put my life on the line. I am going to try and make this community a better community through my actions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they go into it with good intention, but the majority of the systems aren't training you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many times can you see some level of like gang involvement until you start to assume that this is a dangerous situation before you even get there? And you're not taught proper de-escalation.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taught, like a social worker studies for like 4 years to be a social worker. You know, they learn psychology. A psychologist studies for however many years. If you're going to work with, I don't know the PC term, but people who have some kind of mental issue,
Mm-hmm.
you have to study for a long time to know how to deal with people of either that particular mental issue or, the various colors of it. And if we expect that from a psychologist, or
Mm-hmm.
a doctor, to study this long to deal with people who have any kind of issue, how are we then going to expect a police officer to have at most like a 6-month course on it, to just be like, oh yeah, I can handle any kind of mental issue that I'm going to approach in the street? So it's like they need more training if they're going to be there.
And it should be higher paid.
Yeah.
So it should be, being a police officer in my mind should be one of the most sought after jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are the protector of our society.
Yeah.
And they're currently not.
No.
And so I'm like, they should be paid more, but there should be more training,
Mm-hmm.
more requirement of them. And that all comes down to funding and redirecting funding, because they have the money. So it used to be, that they were just getting leftover military things.
Mm-hmm.
That program has been out since the Obama era. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 Hummers my small town has were paid for by our tax dollars. And
Awesome.
I'm like, awesome. Great.
This is where I want my progressive tax dollars to go.
Like, it's not like County Road 13 has went from asphalt to a dirt road since I was a child. All right? And it's one of our most traveled roads. Like,
that's why the police need the Hummers. They gotta drive on that
yeah,
dirt
gotta
road.
drive on the dirt road. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like,
Mm-hmm.
fund correctly, redirect the funding. Like, it's that's the problem. I'm like, no, you can have this money,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to be used in like helping mental health and uplifting your community. And the moment you try to beat down a community, it doesn't go well. It
Yeah.
never has. We can look at history, it never does.
And something I would argue for is that potentially even in the additional funding, or the redirected funding, redirect it to the mental health of the police officers.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it must do to see.
Oh, my mom is a broken person
Yeah.
now.
And then to day after day after day, it's like, no, you need a 6-month vacation. I don't know if you need to ride the desk. I don't, because I understand in our capitalist society, we can't just have people do nothing and get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And even me as a taxpayer, I've lived in America my whole life. I would probably be a little bit upset if I were to be like, wait, so my tax dollars, I'm going to work 40 hours a week. My tax dollars are going to police officers to do nothing. I'm going to be upset. So maybe they ride the desk or however, but they have to be taken out of circulation for a little bit to decompress.
My mother, before this, worked in DHR.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she dealt with like specialty cases where like it was like child sex rings, like the roughest of the rough shit. And and I've watched my mother just degrade as a person since I was like 13. Like, and I'm like, this is eating you alive. Please find some other work.
Yeah.
Like, you come home so just broken because of the things you see.
Mm-hmm.
And like, her new job is a step in the right direction because police officers honestly saw less shit than she did.
I believe that.
And she's not even like an out on the street police officer. She's a court police officer. So she's just dealing with she's called a buffet, which is pretty much the police officer that sits beside the judge and helps control the courtroom. But before that, she did DHR, and I'm like, it's rough. And we live in one of the poorest, so we're at the foothills of the Appalachians where we live. Okay. Which is one of the poorest areas in the United States. The average income for that area is like $8,000 a year.
Wow. I don't even understand that. That does not compute.
And people you'll have like 6 people living in a trailer. You know.
Yeah. So things happen.
So shit happens. It's rough. But there's less people. If it's a populated area, it would have been... Yeah. You know, but... Yeah, and I'm like... So shit happens. It's rough. And I'm like, you need other work because this is killing you as a person.
And I think that is what we need to recognize as like a whole society. Is like the police need to be... And I'm sure that the daddy issue police officers would not be happy.
Oh, no, that. Not at all.
But, you know, it comes back to, like, we as the people have the power to dictate. And we can't give all of our power to any one entity.
It's dangerous.
It is. And it's dangerous even for those directly benefiting from that power given, because as we get more, I guess, towards a totalitarianism area, the police benefit, arguably. They get paid more, they get more power, blah, blah, blah. But as we're saying, the police are not benefiting from it. They're being hurt by it because they're expected to wear so many different hats. If you're on a beat, you don't know what you're going to see. And you're not trained to see most of it. So all you're trained to do is shoot, you know. And it hurts them. So it's like, if as society we don't go out of our way to mandate what should or shouldn't be done, and we let things just run their course in a laissez-faire, fully laissez-faire, you know, because I do believe that we do need to let freedoms reign. We do need to let markets dictate, you know, how things happen, because that's just the way it should be, which is where being canceled is an issue, because who dictates? I think that we do need to self-govern or self-run our governance, our power that way. But the police, the power force is being single is not a smart way to do it. Yeah, it's dangerous.
One reason I am so afraid of, like, so I understand having a global currency solves so many financial issues. I understand, you know, having more open borders in that sense and crossing over opens trade and all that. I understand that. But how do we de-escalate to that? And one of the answers people give a lot of time is like, oh, world government. I'm like, all right, world government, but how is there a singular, like, presidential head? You know? Because that's dangerous when you have one person, because let's say they're, you know, I don't know, Russian. Yeah. And then they go, those people in Malaysia are the worst. We can all agree that they're the worst. Less in the Malaysian people. I'm like, that's the danger of it, when you give power to one central point where it can direct it to something. So I'm like, do we go towards smaller localized governments? But then we can't accomplish big things real fast because there's a lot of bureaucracy. So
well, it's like the whole arguments towards like universal healthcare. If we don't do it at like a federal level, it is bound to fail. There's just not the numbers that would pay into it to be able to pay out in the ways that it would require for a medical issue. If it's just like, oh, only New Jersey is going to do universal. Well, that's just not enough people. There are just not enough healthy people paying into the system to cover the sick people.
As and all make the sick it affordable. People are going to move there.
Yeah, and then make it affordable for people, because that's the whole point. Would be more affordable if everyone's putting in a little bit Yeah, everyone's putting in $10, but only 5 people need things. It is cheaper for everyone. So, like, there's some things that do need a federal edge, but if it were, like you said, like a one world government kind of thing, like, let's take an American-centric view, and, you know, you can look at the Middle East, and a lot of Americans would say, that whole side, just get rid of it.
Just get rid of it.
They're in Islamic theocracy. We don't agree. They're not allowed to be Islamic anymore, you know, or an Islamic-based government because we're the one government, you know. Well, who are we to dictate? How do we cancel that? Now, are there elements that I would argue are easily quantifiably bad and easy to cancel? Yes. Such as, like, in some of that culture, some areas, there are people who argue you can marry someone who's like 9 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I could agree easily with, we can fight to cancel that if it was happening in America where, yeah, that's something that we could have the power to do.
But even then, that's your cultural stigma.
Yeah.
And theirs, you know,
it's okay.
It's okay, and that's frightening to us.
Yeah.
But
it's that's where I think that it's quantifiable, because you can say, we can prove that you're hurting this person.
Yeah.
We can arguably prove you're hurting this person. It's so much more difficult if it's like a comedian said mean word. Yeah.
And then, like, is it like, if there was a world government, you know, you have, like, places like Papua New Guinea or the Amazon, is it our responsibility to pull those individuals up? Because once we do that, everyone needs to be on the same playing field.
Yeah.
And you'll have areas that are just, you know, considered to our standard of living, just not up to it. But then they might argue, like, no, our standard of living is better. Because if you look at the hunter-gatherer societies that exist in, like, the Amazon, they only work 3 hours of the day.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day they sit around and have fun. And, you know, I'm like...
There's less depression, less anxiety.
Depression. But they also don't have concepts like time. So, you know, I'm like, You
know, like, some days a part of me is like, you know what, I'm just going to run into the mountains. I'm going to go to one of those, like, shacks in Maine or something where it's like there's no electric, and I'm just going to go look out at the lake and just, this is my life. Become a woodsman, grow the beard real long. But then I realized, like, wait, I really like Wi-Fi. No more central air.
Oof, yeah. I run the Alabama Mushroom Society, and I have that urge all the time. I'm like, I would survive. If I lived in a shack in the middle of the woods, I would have plenty to eat. I know, because I often go on forays and I pick so much food in one day, it's enough to last me the entire week. So I'm like, all right, I would survive. I have that temptation a lot. Actually, the coffee you drank was a mushroom coffee.
Regular mushrooms, right?
Regular mushrooms, not.
Oh, it was really good.
Yeah, yours was lion's mane and chaga.
Okay.
Mine was cordyceps and chaga. So.
Yeah, it was tasty. So,
yeah.
If anyone's watching or listening and they want, an interesting, tasty coffee, I drank it black and it was nice.
Yeah.
I kept drinking it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, but it's interesting because what we're kind of saying is that a one government system comes with a lot of issues. A multi-party system comes with a lot of issues. And what's happening with canceling is that it's a system, it's a governing system, a governing body with no controls, no mandates, no ideas. It's completely organic and fluctuating all the time. And how do we, as just people attempting to navigate and agreeing with it at principle level?
Oh, it's dangerous then, because then it's a bear in the room that you're like, oh, this bear's cuddly one second, but the next second it might turn around and eat me. Or a big cat, because the world's focused on big cats right now. You know, it's a big cat.
And you can love the tiger, you can give it meat all the time, but when is it going to look at your arm like meat? And maybe never.
Maybe never. Maybe it'll be your friend for the rest
Yeah.
of your life, but there's always the chance.
Like, you know how to pet it right, and, you know, cuddle it, and the things you do with it are great. And it loves you, you love it. But what if just one day you opened a can of tuna and got a little bit of tuna on your hand, you know?
Or you like it misread you, you know, like
you tried to pet it and it thought you were going to smack it.
Yeah.
So, or it took the pet as like thought you were a flea or something, and it now attacks you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I think we're kind of in agreement with the fact that it's good that people are standing up for what they believe in, and they're trying to protect those who are lesser, you know, in society standards. Like, don't punch down is kind of what the whole cancel culture is fighting to do. It's like those in power should not be trying to harm those not in power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fairly universally
Agreed
agreeable.
upon.
But who is it that dictates who's being hurt? Now, I think it should be the person who's hurt. Like, you know, in the Rihanna Chris Brown case, it's like I feel like Rihanna is the one who gets to dictate, you know, I was hurt. But then, is she?
You have things. You also have the danger of like Johnny Depp recently with that ex-wife. You know, he got canceled because she said, "Oh, he beat me and he was all crazy," and then now they're finding out. Oh no! This bitch was nuts.
It was the opposite way.
It was the opposite way. So you have the danger of completely accepting the person who calls victim first.
Yeah.
You know, because it may be a lie. It's like and it's awful. You know, to do this. The whole assume all raped. You know, people that say, "Oh, I've been raped," assume they're telling the truth. You know, and like I want to do that, but I know guys who were like arrested, and then the girl will be like, "Actually, I was just mad."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you should have gotten in trouble for that, but you didn't because our society, you know. And they're like, they didn't do that at all. And there was no evidence, you know, or like they made up the evidence over via text, you know, or something like that. I'm like, it's dangerous to immediately assume that the person crying wolf, there's actually a wolf.
And that's like, you know, like I was saying, I don't think that we could live in a governmentless society because I don't think people are good at heart necessarily. I think that of course there are some good people.
I think the majority are, and I think people act irrationally at times in their life. And then they go, "Oh, I was a shitty person.
Yeah. Please forgive me now.
Please forgive me now." What do you do with that?
But it's like, you know, I remember having a discussion about like we just shouldn't be taxed because I would give my money to homeless people then. I'd have more money to give. You know, and I would give it directly to the sources that I want to give it. And that sounds nice in theory. It does.
Doesn't work.
But I'm going to be honest. And I think I'm a decent person. I could be a terrible person. I'm not going to... But I'm like, you know what would happen if I got more taxes? Like, I got more money instead? Same thing that happens when I get my tax refund. It either goes into, you know, a savings account or, you know, into some kind of investment. Or I'm going to get a bigger TV. I would love to say it goes to charity. I would love to.
It's all about society holding people accountable. My grandfather on my dad's side he's very, very well off. Started working at the railroad at about, I think he was 15 when he started, and it was a quarter of every paycheck went into dividends and just railroad stock, and he's really, really well off. Owns a large chunk of the American Railroad Company.
Makes a lot more than $8,000 a year.
Yeah, and and we've talked about this, he leans progressively left.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that has to be there. I have to be taxed at this rate.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's like, stocks are not taxed at, they
That
need
rate,
to be
yeah.
taxed higher.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, I have to be, because otherwise I wouldn't.
Yeah.
He flat out admits it. He's like, I would not write that check to help people because I just wouldn't. He's
Yeah.
like, he's like, I don't want to have the time to deviate that money in the proper, like, allocate it properly. But he's like, I wouldn't do that.
And I don't think that he's necessarily a bad person.
No,
for saying
I don't
that.
either.
You know, but it's like, think of the things that taxes go towards. It's like schools, roads. Am I going to pay for a road I'm never going to see to have potholes filled? Just, hey, you company, you fill potholes. I like you. Here's, $200.
Mm-hmm. No.
It would not occur to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd really fund an animal shelter, so maybe there'd be some benefit in my taxes going there. But it's like, I do think that we need some governing body.
Should you have more say in where your taxes go? Do you think that? Do you think we should have a representation, like when I fill out my taxes, I can say, like, they're like, all right, we need this bare minimum, a baseline bare minimum to go to these. But the rest you get to decide. So people that, are like, I want to go to the military complex, horrible idea, but, or
Yeah.
I want it to go to healthcare or education.
I think we should have more control of it, definitely.
Because right now it's only through representation.
Yeah.
And it's not working. So,
yeah. And I truly do think that there should be some level that we have more of, but I think that it's coming from my perspective looking at it. I think everyone would say, yeah, I want more control of where it goes, because for me, I don't think we should have as much money going to the military complex personally. I would want more money going towards schools and education and infrastructure, keep it, building up communities, blah, blah, blah. But I also think that we need to look back at what we said earlier about something like 47% of the population don't even go to vote. So
tax them
how
if they don't.
How much can we depend on these people doing what they should do, as in fill out these forms or however it would go? And then what happens if they don't? Who then has the power to say where that money then goes?
Well, we already do that through representation.
Yeah.
You fill out the check, and your representatives decide where it goes. So, like, when you're filling out your taxes, there's a box where you can say, government can fully decide, or you can say, no, I want to decide, like they might keep, it might be like 40%, as a baseline minimum where they have to choose what goes through via representation. And then the other 60, you can go, all right, I want all of it in education, or I want or I want like this percentage in education, this in roads, this, and then you would be able to, especially if the money stayed local, like communities that are at risk about certain things, like they're like, all right, everyone, there would be a campaign, everyone put your tax dollars to the roads, because our roads are just really sucky.
Yeah.
We would like our roads to be fixed, so there would be campaigning about fixing.
Our schools are great. Our roads.
Our roads are bad. There would be local campaigning for, as long as it stayed more local. So like your local campaigning for the proper things, because your community can see. I mean, look at Black Lives Matter, the community coming together. And saying like, there is this problem in our community and we're trying to fix it. The community has the capability to organize. I think the danger is when all the power is away from the community.
Yeah.
So,
one of my fears, though, with that is I may put on the air of being a super well-educated person, but I'm pretty dumb in a lot of things. So, I think that there's a lot that I come at with a certain level of ignorance, and I don't know how. Like, I look at the bloated military budget, and I say it's bloated.
I was so bloated.
But I also personally am not, involved in any of those decision making. So when I hear about like one missile costing $500,000,
It's so bloated.
I'm like, do we really need that missile? But
can I rant for a second?
I guess go ahead. Yeah.
An ex-boyfriend
Mm-hmm.
is in the Air Force and sent me a video. This was several years ago. Of there's these plates that are on the undersides of these silent bombers, and they're anti-radar plates.
Yeah.
One of those is $250,000, and they're only like this big.
Yeah.
And the video was of someone dropping one, and they're like, "Eh." I'm like, "That's $250,000 just broken, gone, right
shattered?
there, shattered." Like, and then so we had this conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, no, this is the entire military." He's like, "You could put a CNC machine in building, but there are contracts for like these pieces. So like this one company has to make all the bolts for these particular airplanes, and that bolt will cost the military $800."
Jesus.
And he's like, "You could have someone in-house that ran CNC machine and could make the part for like a few bucks."
So it's bloated on purpose.
So it's bloated on purpose through via military contracts, and
Yeah.
it's massively bloated.
So, do you think, though, if people had the power and said, the majority of people had that ability to dictate their own taxes, and they cut the funding to the military, they're just like, nope, I want to go to the schools. My kid's in school. I care more about school than military at this moment. And that just kept happening consistently. Do you think that a less funded military would be more efficient?
Oh, it'd have to be, because there would be people that need to be fed, and when you have, the military complex eating up 80% of the income that's coming in through for like bolts and pieces that are really just so cheap to make.
Yeah.
And they all of a sudden, all the eyes that were originally just happy because they were getting all the tax dollars, all those eyes go, wait a second, money's running dry. And they look at the person who's selling them missiles at an outrageous rate, and they look at their house and they go, you're going to have to cut your price because we see how well you're doing. You're clearly not in the bad. That's capitalism, and it's boiled down,
Yeah. So the market would dictate.
So the market would dictate and fix that. Things would get cheaper in the proper way, I think.
I mean, I think it sounds like a good system, but I also think, part of the reason that it is the way it is, both military and medical is so bloated is because of lobbying.
Yeah, no, lobbying should be illegal.
So I think that that would be one of the things, is that you're saying that it would be allocated like 60% of your taxes, you'd be able to decide where it goes or something. I feel like the lobbyists would be paying the governors and things that would be writing that, like, how much is, and they'd be like, hey, look, we have so much coming out, all you can dictate is 20 this tax season, only 20%. And again, it would all be still being funneled into the military.
But it's already being doing that.
Yeah. I'm just saying that So
if you cut the paycheck...
Even a little.
Even a little. But if you cut it like that, there's so much where these people are just like, all right, we are only allowed to spend this much on this.
I think that realistically, though, the only way that this would ever come forward would be like, we have to get those guillotines ready.
Oh, I know. and I'm like, when I see what's happening, I'm like, I don't want another French Revolution. It didn't end well for anyone.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, no. And I'm like, but I mean, in the long term, it went great.
Yeah.
Because the French got a form of democracy that actually pretty much founded... The French Revolution set the stage for the American, in the sense of like, all right, here's a form that we think we're going to do, and then we got the greatest freedom that, well, us white people got the greatest freedom that had ever existed for, quite some time, since probably hunter-gatherers, for all I know,
Yeah, and I mean, we are one of the richest nations on the planet right now. So if you're looking at it as prosperity equals money, America won.
Yeah.
And we did it based on some of the effects of the French Revolution. But we are looking very similar to what started the French Revolution. And it's like, I've been saying that since I was about like 12 years old. It's like,
me too. I saw this building.
I don't like this. I like the musical Les Mis. I don't like what happened in it. Can we not? You know?
I don't want to chop off people's heads, but you know, when 1% owns 80% of the wealth,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like,
yeah. And I guess that the internet is waking us up, which is where people are angry and lashing out at anything and everything, including their fellow man who's in it together, just because it's like you're waking up and you don't know what you're angry at. Just, I'm mad. Something needs to change, and it must be that person. You know, they did it. You know, rather than going, oh wait, this whole system is bunk. Yeah, we need to change everything, and it's not just one person, you know, who has a bad opinion. It's a whole society built upon a bad opinion for a long time.
For a long time. I mean, I can't blame the guillotine people though, because like if all I had to do was kill, because the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, so like 1 in 10,000, you know, like 1 in 100,000, that's your billionaire or whatever. If all of them died, and then my wealth, everyone's wealth went up, you know, like 20-30%, I'm like they're kind of already scraping us over the coals.
Yeah, but then, you know, there is a certain amount of ethics that you need to look at it. Because it's like, you know, as a Jew, I'm gonna say it, is it, you know, the Germans who were in the 1930s when the Jews started being like, hey, you can't have this business anymore. You can't live here anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, those other Germans did real good. They started making a lot of money now, because all of a sudden the store, there's a vacuum. I'm going to fill that vacuum. And they started making money. So there's a reason why people were like, well, if we just look the other way and we pretend it's not happening, I do real well. I'm going to pretend that's not happening. So I think that, yes, a part of me some days I do wake up and go, maybe we should just behead the billionaires. Maybe we should. They just shouldn't be. Get rid of them, you know. And we can do it by just killing like 5 people, and we'd all do a lot better.
Or we can just tax them at the rate that they need to be taxed, and then they can exist as individuals.
But if they keep fighting the taxing, if they keep lobbying and playing the game where they squirrel away money under this, over there.
The funny part to me, though, is the biggest billionaires really don't do that, I don't think. Bill Gates has been like, tax me! Please! Tax me! And I think it's like this middle weird ground of like, millionaires who just they've really worked hard to get their wealth, you know, and they're like, no, I'm gonna fight because I finally got this so that other people can get it. And then these billionaires are like,
I have too much, but I'm not gonna give it away.
I'm not gonna give it away, you know.
And I think that that's also something that a lot of people struggle to understand too, is like when we hear how much Jeff Bezos is worth, I get sick. I think most people do, except for people who, you know, for some reason get off on seeing how much he makes. I don't understand, but most people are like, that's a lot. That's a lot of a lot. But it's also because he owns the majority of shares in Amazon, one of the largest, if not the largest, like internet monolith there is. I guess Google is probably bigger, but I don't think
Alphabet.
Alphabet. Yeah. But I don't think that there's one person who owns as much majority as Jeff Bezos owns majority in Amazon.
There is one person richer, and his name is Satoshi, and he's the founder of Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
But no one knows who he is.
Yeah.
And there's a large chance it's probably Elon Musk, because there's some stuff in Bitcoin that looks a lot like PayPal, and Elon Musk wrote PayPal.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so, like, when I see Elon do these things that are like, I'm like, that's only a thing a crazy man who has no fear of losing any money would do. Yeah. I'm like, it's because he's sitting on like $1 trillion right now.
just shoving all his money into like a new thing. I just made $7 billion.
Yeah. and to him, if he owns like $1 trillion, because that's You know, if he created, there's several coins that were made from Bitcoin. If he created all of them, it's like $1 trillion
Yeah.
sitting there. And he's just sitting on it.
Yeah.
And so if you own $1 trillion, you're not afraid to do anything. It's
Yeah.
like sitting on the largest nest egg ever made.
But that's the thing, though, is that, like, a lot of these people, it's not liquid. Like, it's stocks, bonds, and it's owning Amazon. If Jeff Bezos actually wanted his $1 trillion, he would have to sell his ownership of Amazon. So I think he's still well off. And basically just based on the credit of his name and, you know, how much he's potentially worth, he has no problem buying anything. But as long as Amazon does well, he's going to continue making theoretic money. But it's also not money that really exists simultaneously.
And if he sells off all of his stuff, the value of it just drops. And no one will be there to buy it, you know, so...
So it's like, okay, who wants to give me $1 trillion? No, I don't have $1 trillion to give you.
Yeah.
You know, who has it? So it'd be like, the government buy it, basically? Like, in order for him to get that return, it would be... A lot of people would go broke to give him the money that he's valued at.
I'm waiting on a pack of billionaires to go say, we're going to buy all this land that the government owns, and we'll pay off the debt. The 14, you know, because 14 trillion, you know, whatever. Yeah. We're now closer to 20 trillion because of all the stimulus and the way that worked. But, you know, like pay off a huge chunk of it.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, Elon, all of them get together and they're like, we're going to make our own city-state. We're going to buy, you know, this chunk of land from the government. Because it essentially owns it, you know. We'll buy all the infrastructure, we'll buy all that, you know. And then...
But what's the incentive?
To create and consume more.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're creating for consumers.
But, you know, then it fills their coffers. And it's just... that's one of the things that I think a lot of people also don't understand is that at the higher wealth area, we get upset that they are squirreling away money, that they're playing different games. But that's the thing. It's just like a massive game. It's a massive board of Monopoly. And yes, for us, it's like, you just took probably the amount of money I'm going to make in my entire lifetime, and you just did something with it. Just, woo!
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to you. And that's like the money I will make in my entire life. You know, you just took like $3 million and just, Yeah. And we get upset by that, you know, as the average Joe kind of worker. But for them, it's just a game. It's just like, how can I not pay taxes? Not that I don't have to, or not, but there's all these loopholes and things I can play in.
That's why they want the game harder.
I have no... And it is really easy when you have, like, accountants who you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not millions of dollars a year, to just do the math for you. They have... It's incentive. And they don't have the incentive to fix a government for any reason. It works for them. Now, they might have the incentive if a guillotine was on their front lawn.
I'm so afraid that's the thing we have to do.
Yeah.
Because the growth period of that is rough.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
But then at the same time, you know, me as a person who... I create things, I like creating things, and I would love to have some fame and success from it. Yeah, where you sit right now, we are not in a mansion. You know.
Oh, no.
So let's say...
You'll be back in 2 years, and we'll have...
it'll be then.
It'll be then. I'll manifest that. I'll read The Secret about 100 times.
But if that's the case, you know, you don't then want to lose it, you know, not have the option to have that success at... water?
Vata. I come from Germans.
Oh, okay.
So,
but yeah, I think that, you know, we want that option still. Like, I want to be rewarded if I do something good, and I want to live comfortably for making other people's lives more comfortable. And even when I get upset when I see Jeff Bezos' net worth, I'm also still a member of Amazon Prime, and I still buy things off Amazon almost daily. He makes my life easier.
He gives convenience to people, and we'll pay for it.
And that's the thing, is like, if we wanted to, we can move into the mountains, go forage our food, and, you know, not benefit those capitalists in society. And if we can't do it in America, we can move to another country and do it there. But as we said, I like my central air. I like my running water. And I like to not worry if it's filtered or not. I don't want to have to boil it before I drink. I just want to turn a knob and there it is.
Well, if you live in the cleanest area, you don't have to boil it.
True, yeah. Just be next to a river, If my roof starts caving in, I don't necessarily want to get up there and do it myself. Can I? Sure. Do I want to? No. I'd much rather be able to just be like, hey, you want some of my money to go up on my roof during the middle of the day and make it good?
I'm
Thanks.
used to breaking my back at a desk.
Yeah.
Not on the roof. You go do that for me.
I went to school, so I don't have to, thanks. And yeah, it's nothing against anyone who does it. I need you to do that, and you probably make more money than I do too, so.
It makes some pretty good money.
But yeah, I mean, we can just stop helping Amazon. We can, not buy Teslas or buy Tesla stock. We can, stop supporting J.K. Rowling, going back to that. But most people don't want to. Most people don't want to be inconvenienced or miss out on that form of entertainment that they're receiving from that. People still want to listen to R. Kelly's music. People still want to listen to Chris Brown's music, despite the fact that these people have been canceled. People still want to read Harry Potter and watch the Harry Potter movies, even if they disagree. People still want to eat Chick-fil-A.
I don't like Chick-fil-A.
I'm not a huge fan myself. So that whole argument was like, oh, good, I don't have to worry about
Yeah, I don't have to worry about these people dragging me to this. So...
And I understand, should I, go purchase a painting by Hitler? Maybe not. But he was a painter, he did create art.
He did. He made some actually pretty good art.
Yeah.
The poor little man. He went on a rampage because no one enjoyed his art, and it was actually good art.
So I think, there is something to be said about, learning the negatives that someone's doing, I think, is a good thing. The whole call to action of canceling is a great thing. Because since it's not part of necessarily my own world, I wouldn't know about the actions of Chick-fil-A and them, investing in this or that. I wouldn't pay any attention. It's not something that comes up on my feed. The algorithms aren't, well, it does now because of cancel culture. But the algorithms wouldn't say, hey, Chick-fil-A, you don't eat there, you don't follow the news about them. They did this. Cancel culture brought that to my attention. I wasn't listening to Chris Brown, and I don't watch TMZ. I know that those exist, but I didn't. So I wouldn't have known that he had beat Rihanna. I wouldn't have known that, you know what? Maybe I don't feel like buying this album if it wasn't for cancel culture. Yeah. But going back to do we destroy someone? I don't think that we actively go out of our way, but I think that we can let it happen organically to the benefit of society. Because what we're really saying is that we don't want to support it. So it's almost like, I feel like with J.K. Rowling's books. Maybe you don't buy the books. Maybe you find a PDF online to download. And that's where our power lies, is that you can... Because at the end of the day, she's still going to be J.K. Rowling. She's still going to have hundreds of millions of dollars. She's doing fine.
She's okay.
Yeah. But if you don't want to support it, that is the power of the people. We vote every time we spend money. Every time we put $1 towards something, we say we want more of that. And I guess that opinions are something that we do vote on. If you have a bad opinion that hurts people... maybe I want to vote against it, and voting against it is buying from your competitor. But I don't think that we should be getting rid of its existence.
I also don't think the government has the right to tell people what things they should cancel. Yeah. It's I, a pansexual or bisexual, whatever you want to say, person... when the whole cake ordeal happened, I was like...
I'm not sure I'm...
this was right after gay marriage was legalized,
Oh,
somewhere
yeah,
out
yeah,
west,
the
where
bakery.
the bakery that wouldn't make a gay cake. I'm like, just go buy your cake somewhere else. I mean, you can tell everyone, like, hey, these people were just assholes and they refused. But you can't force that bakery to make your cake, because then you have, if you say, well, you have to do that, you have to force them to make your cake. What if I come in and I'm like, I want a cake of a baby cut in half, really detailed?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you have to make it now.
You have to make it now.
Well, I'm very much so against that. You know? It's like, well, no, you have to.
You have to.
You have
so
to.
I'm like, huh. But then when you have, like, large corporations, I don't think, like Walmart shouldn't be able to say, now no gay people can shop at our stores. I mean, the gay people probably aren't really shopping at Walmart anyways, but
it depends on how much money you have.
Yeah.
Ethics cost money.
Yeah, and so I don't know where to draw that line in between, like, personal and societal. Like, where do you say, like, all right, the person can have this opinion and it can be done on their own opinion, their own interactions, but once it starts representing a societal construct, where do you draw that line? Like there's a really weird line to draw, and it's almost like a Kinsey scale, where it's like a scaling system. I'm like,
because like what comes to mind as we're talking about this is like a major corporation does have a certain responsibility to quote unquote do the right thing. And again, it goes back to who's dictating the right thing. I'm not sure, because unlike a physical ailment, a physical bodily harm, which is quantifiable, it's harder to dictate something else. But it would seem wrong if Walmart were to sell a whole bunch of Nazi flags.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Buy your Nazi flag. It's on sale now. July 4th special, or Hanukkah special. Ooh. But
you got me with that.
But if they were now, with the current state of things, to sell Confederate flags, some areas would be like, yeah, this is Walmart and they should sell us our Confederate flag, rebel flag.
I'm pretty sure they've sold rebel flags.
I'm
in the
sure
past.
they have. But in the current state of affairs, should they pull that line? And who gets to tell them that they should? Now, is it necessarily a symbol of hate?
The current rebel flag isn't even the real Confederate flag. It's stupid shit.
And my personal opinion, is, since the Union won, even if you're a full Confederate and all that, it's an act of treason. Like, we won, you lost. If you are waving the quote-unquote rebel flag, yes, you are a rebel, but you're rebelling against the nation that you're in, who's governing you, and I should be able to try you for treason now.
It's a very strange thing, because I grew up in that, and I'm like, y'all both hate and love the U.S. government.
I'm confused.
I'm very confused at what you're... And it's all about who's in power, and both sides do it. Like when Obama was in power, they were so afraid of a tranny government, and I'm like, okay. And then the left does that now, since Trump is in power. But I think it's a danger either or. Tranny's dangerous. But I'm like, I don't understand y'all. Y'all, so many fallacies. What's going on here?
Yeah, and I mean, it then comes down to education, which is why I say almost all my tax dollars would just be like, education.
Oh,
education.
My area needs it. Straight into education.
Yep. But then you're just being, liberal. You and your liberal agenda going to teach us thoughts. I'm sorry.
Teach us thoughts. Did you see the new
I'm progressive, sorry.
Did you see the new Trump themes tweets where it's like the education system's getting defunded because it's only liberal propaganda, and I'm like, okay.
And and it's sad because I do know some very intelligent conservative people, and it's just like,
Oh, I don't think it has anything to really. I mean, it does, but it doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. I know some very intelligent liberals and some very intelligent conservatives, and I know some very dumb conservatives and some very dumb liberals.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. But I do think that education.
oh, it's important.
Yep.
It's so important, in whether or not it's self-education or by an institution. I prefer it not to be by an institution, but we're just dealing with the cards we have. So,
Yeah. And I think it's difficult. Basically, it's like the world that we are in today is difficult because you don't want to screw up. You could ruin yourself, easy. Yeah, and the issue is that I guess that some people on the front lines of the arguments know what's happening, know where the lines are being drawn, know when to pull a punch or when to make it, But for the rest of us who are a little bit behind, who are catching up, who are like, look, it doesn't. I guess that those of us who are entering at it with privilege, that it doesn't affect me directly, so I'm not as knowledgeable as you are, who has to deal with it. I don't know what's happening, so it's like walking through a minefield, and it's like,
when's the beast gonna turn on me?
Yeah.
Any moment.
So, that's where it's problematic for me. Is just like, if I want to create something or I want to say something, how do I say it? How do I know how to say it? And it's not saying that it shouldn't exist. Like, it has so many benefits, as we've discussed, and it is just the power that we all have. It's our way of governing, and individual government is a good idea. In being an individual is what this country is built on. But if we let it just like run too wild, we wind up hurting ourselves in confusion.
Well, yeah, we're hurting ourselves in confusion. We are very primitive primates with very dangerous tools. Bombs, nuclear weapons. And then, I think both tactics can be successful. I mean, look at China right now. This is a hot take. I'm going to get in trouble for what I'm about to say. All right. I don't necessarily think that... I don't know if coronavirus was actually biowarfare or not. But China's numbers are really, really low. And at first I thought they were lying. But I have friends who are over there and they're like, nope, this is really what it's like. And I was like, is it the health infrastructure? And they're like, no, it's the shutting down of everything. And I'm like, I don't know... I know that that's important, but I don't know how, the part of me that studied this, people are still going to interact. You have to do day-to-day life, especially in a bigger city. So I still feel like it would have spread more. And so part of me is like, what if they made this virus, because the virus has been, they made it, and they pre-vaccinated all of their... Because they could do that. I mean, you're required, yearly checkups and a yearly flu shot. All they have to do is tell the one pharmacy company that they make, do this. But add this vaccine in. And they're like, that virus doesn't exist. Do it anyway. And no one would question,
Yeah, because they're a semi-communistic government, so it's like, you have to do what we say.
You have to do what we say.
Okay.
All right. And so then their entire population is vaccinated. And then they do release sick. And the ones that didn't apply to their government rules are the ones who got sick, which was very little people. And they're the ones who died. That's sad,
Yeah.
But then it spreads everywhere. And, I, as an individual, could see a communist, society doing that, saying, the ones who don't follow the rules, stomp out. So I'm like, but it's effective because I think China is about 30 years more advanced than us. I have friends who are there. They do have their rural, middle and nowhere areas, but everywhere has that. Friends who are there, they're like 30 years.
The growth of Shanghai is incredible. I think it's Shanghai, the one that was basically started in the 90s, and now it's like a mega metropolis.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
And that's all because the society just joined together and tackled one problem after another, which at first seemed really messy, but now that they've figured out the formula, that can build entire cities,
Yeah.
overnight.
Yeah. It's incredible, and I mean, I personally don't believe that it is biowarfare, but if it were,
If it were, I could see that happening. I never said that it was.
yeah,
But I like, that's been a thought train.
were.
I'm like, if it were,
Could
this
they?
is how I would do it.
Yeah.
Like me as a communist, me as a dictator, that's how I would do it. Because then it would eliminate the ones who are not going by what I say. And then...
And I think that ability to come up with a theory like that and post it online is
Oh, it's dangerous.
real dangerous.
I don't care, though.
Yeah, no. I mean, because it's like, I will openly say I don't believe in a flat Earth. And
Oh,
I
no,
think
but
that
I can
people-
entertain the idea
Yeah.
if necessary.
And I think that that's kind of where we do also run into an issue with individualized governance. Is like, well, I'm going to say that there's a flat Earth and I believe it. It doesn't agree with anything science-wise. You can't do that. Well, I can. I'm an individual. I can do whatever I want. You can. Okay, you're right. You can do that. I think should be what we're saying here. And I think that's where it's like, for me, I completely agree by there should be individual mandate, and I am a self person, but I think that we need to, that's where education is so important. Now, again, that goes back to, though, who dictates what is good education? Because I have my views, which are mostly liberal leaning, and I think this is good education to have. I think that flat earth theories are bad education to have and should not be taught in a school system. But I'm making my decisions based off my own personal biases. And that's the same with any kind of government, any kind of education system. That's why we need checks and balances. But even a check and balance is created by someone with their own personal biases.
And then check and balances lead to slow societies. So, like, if you have a unified society like China that just immediately tackled, their coronavirus problem, they said shut down everything.
Yep.
And
everyone has to wear a mask.
everyone
no questions.
has no questions. They were fast and efficient. Ours, the
I don't have to wear a
bureaucracy.
mask. I want to go out in the street and you can't tell me no.
You can't tell me no. I won't get into the mask thing. I worked in a lab for a while, and even people that think they're doing it right, I'm like, you're not doing it right. So I'm like, how do you teach the information of how to do this properly?
Yeah.
And like, even now I'm being bad. I'm touching my face.
You're not supposed to.
I'm not supposed to right now. So.
I drank my coffee.
Coffee's gone.
Yeah, but I got water.
I'm gonna get some more after this.
But
I'm gonna have to call it because I'm gonna have to charge my batteries before Dee Dee gets here.
All right. No, I think we've tackled a number of subjects.
A number of it.
I'm pretty. If you wind up not posting this because you might get canceled.
No, I'm gonna post it. I have one that's like, ooh, it's touchy, and I'm like, and I considered not posting it, but I'm like, I'm gonna post it. I'm gonna do that. So yeah. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I think that we did go a little bit around and about, but we kind of wound up sort of on a.
Yeah, we had a tangible.
Yeah.
In direction.
It connects somehow. Someone maybe in the comments will say how it connects.
Y'all go in the comments and go to the abyss, because that's what I'm calling it. Go to the abyss, comment, like, subscribe, and if you want to be on here, ask. I'll make it happen. Ask and you shall receive. Haven't y'all read The Secret? It can be through Zoom call, or it can be in person. I travel quite a bit. I know that the world's not set up for that right now, but yeah. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome. Shake hands, but coronavirus.
Elbows. There we go. All right. Thanks.
Bye.
If you made it this far, thank you for listening to an extremely long episode of the BullRun podcast. like, subscribe, do all those things. The episode I just mentioned, that was the touchy one, I am not going to post to YouTube. It is with my friend Matt. We talk about some things that might get my channel shut down. So I'm going to set up either a Patreon or some sort of subscription service. It may not be up for a few months, but that episode will be released, just not on YouTube. I need to make money, and at the moment, YouTube is the most viable source. So, we're going to do that. And when that comes around, I'll leave the link down in the bottom, and I salute y'all who made it through 2 hours of my podcast. Y'all are the real troopers. Thank you. Abyss, click the links. You know, the whole thing.